The mysterious humans. In the vastness of the galaxy, there existed countless civilizations. Some were ancient and powerful, others were young but fiercely ambitious. But among them all, there was one species that puzzled the rest: humans. Earth, their home planet, was far from the most advanced in terms of technology or might. Yet humans were known for their strange resilience, and as the strongest species from across the universe gathered in the intergalactic arena, Earth's representatives, mere humans, entered quietly and took their places. It was a grand event, a test of strength and intellect where the universe's mightiest beings came to showcase their power. The arena was a vast hall filled with alien warriors, mercenaries, and scholars from every corner of space. Towering figures with multiple limbs, armored beings with shining skin, and creatures that could manipulate energy with a thought. There were all kinds of species in attendance. But amidst all of them, a single human stood out, not by strength or fearsome appearance, but by their demeanor. They didn't shout. They didn't boast. They sat at the back, calm and quiet. Other species exchanged looks, amused at the humans' apparent shyness. There was something about their silence that intrigued and puzzled everyone. Were they afraid? Were they just out of their depth, here in a galaxy filled with powerful beings? Some of the aliens whispered, assuming that the humans would be no match for the warriors who had fought and won countless battles across galaxies. The humans were unremarkable in size compared to most of the competitors. Their bodies were no larger than the average human on Earth. Unlike the towering, muscular beings in the arena, the humans didn't seem to have any obvious powers, nor did they seem particularly suited for combat. Their race was still young in the cosmic scale, their technology still primitive compared to the ancient empires that dominated the galaxy. Yet, as they sat there, they exuded an undeniable sense of calm that made even the most seasoned warriors feel a faint sense of unease. "You really think they stand a chance?" one alien warrior whispered to another, eyeing the human who sat near the back. The warrior was a brute, his muscles bulging beneath his battle armor. His species had conquered countless planets. He had fought beings that could split moons with their bare hands. Yet the presence of the human stirred something in him. He couldn't put his finger on it, but there was something unsettling about them. "They are Earthlings," the second alien replied with a laugh. "They have no business being here. No one has ever taken them seriously. They were never supposed to be a part of this competition." Despite the mocking tone, the warrior's gaze lingered on the human, a quiet suspicion forming in his mind. The humans didn't participate in the early games or challenges. They sat back, observing the others, their eyes never leaving the arena. In the first few rounds, the competition was fierce. A towering alien with 3 arms, covered in thick scales, demolished his opponent with a single blow. Another fighter, able to control fire with his mind, set the battlefield ablaze and left his opponent scorched. The crowd cheered, watching the battles unfold with excitement. But the humans remained seated, as still as statues, their expressions unreadable. But then, the time for the first real test came. The announcement echoed through the arena, vibrating the very air. Round 5. The Champions Challenge. The strongest warriors from across the galaxy would fight in a battle of wits and strength, a contest to prove who could outlast the others. The humans stood up, stretching their arms, and walking towards the center of the arena, without a single word or look of hesitation. The alien warriors exchanged glances. Some smiled, others chuckled. The human, who had remained so quiet, now stepped forward into the spotlight, as if they had just decided to finally show their true colors. A low murmur spread throughout the crowd. The human would face the warrior who had won every battle before this, a being whose species had a reputation for being the strongest in the galaxy. Everyone expected the human to be easily defeated. The human didn't flinch. They didn't even show fear. In fact, they seemed oddly calm. As the giant alien approached, cracking its knuckles and grinning, the human merely adjusted the tool they had carried with them, a simple wrench. No flashy weapons, No armor, just that tool and a quiet confidence. This puzzled the alien fighters, who were used to seeing grand weapons of destruction, like plasma rifles, energy swords, or claws that could tear through metal. But the human wasn't here for that. The warrior laughed, a deep and rumbling sound that filled the air. "You really think you can defeat me with that?" he asked, looking down at the wrench the human was holding. It was small, unassuming, hardly a weapon by any definition. The human didn't answer. They only walked forward, stepping carefully, almost as if in a slow, deliberate dance. The crowd fell silent, unsure of what to make of the situation. The alien warrior didn't waste any time. He charged forward with brutal speed, slashing at the human with his razor-sharp claws. But the human wasn't caught off guard. With a swift movement, the wrench came up, not to strike but to deflect the blow. The crowd gasped as the alien's strike was blocked so effortlessly. It wasn't the strength of the human that stopped the attack. It was their timing. Perfect. Precise. The alien warrior stumbled back in surprise, but before he could recover, the human was already moving again, faster than anyone expected. They darted to the side, using the wrench to dodge and parry the blows, not trying to overpower the alien, but simply to outmaneuver him. For a moment, it seemed like a game. The alien warrior, used to being the strongest in every fight, was beginning to feel frustration. He swung harder, faster, but every blow was met with a quiet, almost calculated resistance. And with every strike that missed, it became clear the human wasn't afraid. The human wasn't trying to win by brute force. The human was playing the long game. And then, in a single, swift move, the human used the wrench to disarm the alien, knocking his claws from his hands with a well-timed strike. The warrior stood there, stunned, as the human grabbed his weapon, spinning it, and striking once more. It was over. The crowd stood in stunned silence, and the strongest species in the galaxy watched, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The alien warrior had been defeated, not by strength or speed, but by patience, precision, and a deep understanding of the battle. And the human, the one who had remained quiet and at the back, had just won the greatest battle of them all. The species that had underestimated Earth, that had mocked the humans for their quiet nature, were left speechless. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to find out why humans were called Deathworlders, and why they should never, ever be underestimated. As the silence of the arena settled over the stunned crowd, the defeated alien warrior stood motionless, trying to comprehend what had just happened. His claws, once the symbols of his invincibility, lay scattered on the ground, rendered useless by a mere human with nothing more than a wrench. The crowd's reaction was a mix of awe and disbelief. No one had expected the human to not only survive but win. But the humans, quiet and unassuming as always, didn't celebrate their victory. They simply turned and walked back to their seats, as if the entire event had been nothing. The words, "They fight with their minds," seemed to resonate across the arena, entering the minds of every being present. Could it be true? Were the humans simply that smart? The galaxy had always assumed that the strongest species would rise to the top, but these humans had shattered that assumption with ease. While the galaxy's strongest warriors bickered among themselves, unsure of what had just happened, the humans remained calm. Their quiet demeanor hadn't changed. They didn't boast. They didn't flaunt their victory. They simply waited, as if they had all the time in the universe. The competition continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The strongest species now kept a close eye on the humans, wary of their quiet nature. The humans hadn't even shown what they were truly capable of yet, and the warriors feared the day they would. As the next round approached, it became clear that the humans were playing the long game. The powerful warriors, eager to prove their dominance, charged into the arena, one after another, full of pride and arrogance. They attacked without thinking, relying on brute force and overwhelming speed, each fighter eager to outdo the other. But every time they did, the humans simply stood back, analyzing their moves, waiting for the right opportunity. Every punch, every kick, every strike that missed made them more vulnerable. The human didn't need to overpower them. They simply needed to wait for them to make a mistake. It wasn't long before the first warrior, a fierce alien with the ability to manipulate gravity, tried to use their power to crush the human beneath an immense gravitational force. The air thickened, and the ground cracked as the alien tried to squeeze the life out of the human. The crowd gasped, knowing this time the human had no way out. But the human simply lowered their head, smiling calmly as the gravity field intensified. Then, with a sudden movement, they rolled to the side, letting the gravity crush nothing but the ground. The alien's smug grin faded as the human, with ease, flipped back onto their feet and countered with a single, precise strike. Nothing dramatic, but it was enough to disable the alien's gravity field generator, rendering them powerless. The warrior stumbled, utterly defeated. The crowd gasped once more. Not only had the humans survived a lethal attack, but they had turned the tables with nothing but a calculated response. As the arena was silent, the air thick with anticipation, the warriors who had once swaggered into the competition with arrogance and pride were now hesitant, unsure of what to expect. They had all seen what happened to the first few who challenged the humans. None of them had anticipated such an unconventional fighting style, one built on patience, intelligence, and a complete disregard for brute force. It was a style that didn't follow the rules of combat they had known their entire lives. The human, with nothing more than a wrench, had effortlessly defeated their mightiest warriors. And with each victory, the whispers grew louder. The reputation of Earth and its inhabitants, once considered laughable and weak, was changing. There was now fear in the air. A new round was called, and the alien council members watched from their elevated seats, their faces stern and filled with unease. The humans had become an enigma. Their strategy was simple but highly effective. Wait for the opponent to make the first move, analyze their weaknesses, and strike when they least expected it. It was a strategy that no one had anticipated, and one that was now proving to be more dangerous than all the weapons in the galaxy. In the stands, a group of alien students who had come to learn from the galaxy's greatest warriors discussed what they had witnessed. These students were some of the most gifted in their species, hailed as the future leaders of their people. But now, they looked upon the humans with growing uncertainty. "Did you see what happened to Jarnak?" one student whispered to his friend. He thought he could use his telekinetic powers to crush that human. But the human, he didn't even flinch. "It's not just Jarnak," the other student replied, his voice trembling slightly. "It's all of them. Every warrior that's faced the human has failed. They keep getting outsmarted, outmaneuvered." "How?" The first student nodded, staring at the humans sitting calmly in the back, as always. "I've been trying to figure that out. They don't seem like anything special at first, but there's something in their eyes, something different. They know something we don't." As the students discussed, the competition continued. One by one, the alien warriors entered the arena, each eager to prove their superiority. They came from all corners of the galaxy, each with their unique abilities, strength, speed, cunning, or advanced technology. But every time, the humans responded in the same way, patiently, calmly, and with precision. The next fighter, a fierce alien from a distant system known for its intense gravity storms, entered the ring. This creature was built like a boulder, solid and immovable. His species had long been known for their overwhelming strength, able to withstand forces that would crush any lesser being. He stepped forward, cracking his knuckles as he made eye contact with the human. The audience gasped in excitement. This would be a true test of the human's ability to survive. The alien warrior raised his hands, summoning a powerful gravitational field around his opponent, pulling the human down with incredible force. The crowd gasped as the human's body was forced to the ground, his muscles straining to fight the pressure. It seemed like a sure victory for the alien. But then something unexpected happened. The human's eyes narrowed, his hand gripping the wrench tightly as he pushed himself up with slow, deliberate movements. There was no panic, no desperation. He simply moved with calculated precision, analyzing the force pressing down on him, waiting for the right moment to strike. With a sudden burst of strength, the human twisted his body and slammed the wrench into the ground, sending a shockwave through the arena. The gravitational field shattered, breaking apart as the human leaped forward, using the wrench to deflect the alien's attack. With a well-placed blow, the human disabled the alien's gravity control device, turning the tables once again. The alien warrior staggered, stunned by the sudden reversal. Before he could recover, the human was already on top of him, using a series of quick, precise strikes to disable his ability to fight back. In just a few seconds, the mighty alien warrior was brought to the ground, completely incapacitated. The crowd was silent, not because they didn't know how to react, but because they were in awe of the human's tactical genius. This wasn't about brute force. It was about understanding your opponent's strength and exploiting their weaknesses. The human had turned the alien's own power against him, and once again, the human did not celebrate. They didn't even glance at the defeated warrior. They simply returned to their seat, as if nothing had happened. In the stands, the alien students were speechless. They had witnessed the impossible. The human had not only survived the gravitational attack, but had used it to their advantage. The idea that someone could think this way, to not only endure but to learn and adapt in the heat of battle, was something none of them had ever encountered. One of the students, a young alien female, couldn't contain her shock. How is this possible? How did they do that? The others remained silent, deep in thought, as they watched the human silently sit back in their seat, ready for the next challenge. The fear had begun to settle in. The humans weren't just a threat. They were something else entirely. They were out of reach, impossible to predict, and far more dangerous than any of them had realized. The warrior with the greatest strength had fallen, and no one could figure out how a single human had done it. As the battle raged on, the alien warriors began to realize that their previous assumptions about the humans were all wrong. They had believed that the humans were simple, primitive creatures, easy to defeat, unworthy of any real strategy. But now, with each match, their perspective was rapidly changing. They began to suspect that the humans had something far more dangerous than physical strength, intelligence, and adaptability. One by one, the aliens were falling, and they were falling quickly. With every victory, the humans were becoming more and more of a legend. But there was something else, something the Alien Council didn't yet fully understand. The humans were holding back. They weren't showing everything they could do. They were revealing just enough to win, nothing more. As the arena quieted between rounds, the alien students gathered in small groups, whispering nervously amongst themselves. They had been trained their entire lives to be the best, to have the upper hand in every situation. But nothing they had learned could explain the way the human was fighting. "Did you see that last fight?" one student asked, his voice shaking. How did he know exactly what to do? It's like he was predicting every move the alien made. "I don't know," another student replied, her face pale. "It's not just about strength. It's like the human could read their minds. He knew what the alien was going to do before the alien even did it." Another student, a tall, muscular warrior, clenched his fists. "But how? How is that possible? They're just humans." The students fell into silence, the weight of the question hanging in the air. No one had an answer, and the more they watched, the more they realized that they would never have an answer until they understood the human mind itself. Meanwhile, in the center of the arena, the human mechanic sat calmly, wiping his wrench with a cloth as if he were fixing an engine. There was no sign of fatigue, no sign of arrogance or celebration, just quiet confidence. He had taken down alien after alien, each with a different fighting style, each with their own unique set of powers. But it didn't matter. They all had one fatal flaw. they were predictable. The human's strength wasn't in his physical abilities. It was in his mind. He didn't need to be faster or stronger than the aliens. He simply needed to understand them better. Each alien species had its own patterns, its own weaknesses, and the human mechanic had learned how to exploit those weaknesses with a precision that no one else could match. But what the aliens didn't know was that this was just the beginning. They had seen only a fraction of what the human could do. The real battle, the true test of their strength, was yet to come. Back in the stands, the alien council sat in tense silence. They had watched the battles unfold, each more shocking than the last. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. And worse, they were doing it without the use of advanced technology or superior strength. They were doing it with their minds, with a calculated approach that no one had anticipated. One of the council members, an older alien with silver scales, leaned forward, his voice low and filled with concern. "We underestimated them. This isn't just a fight of strength. This is a war of wits, and if we're not careful, we could lose." Another council member, a tall alien with elongated arms, nodded gravely. "They are playing a game we don't even understand. The way they think, the way they plan. It's as if they've been preparing for this moment their entire lives." The silver-scaled alien shook his head. "We've seen how they fight. But what happens when they unleash their true potential? What happens when they stop holding back?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening to smother them all. Back in the arena, the next round was about to begin. A new warrior entered the ring. This one a massive being with 4 arms and the ability to manipulate fire. The alien was known throughout the galaxy for his fiery temper and unstoppable flame attacks. But the human mechanic didn't flinch. He simply stood up, adjusted his tools, and walked into the center of the arena, a calm expression on his face. The alien warrior raised his arms, summoning a giant ball of fire in each hand. The heat radiated through the arena, and the crowd recoiled, some even backing away in fear. The alien roared and hurled the flames at the human, confident that this would be the end. But instead of panicking, the human just smiled. In an instant, he dove into the flames, rolling and dodging with precise movements, his body moving with an agility that no one expected from a simple mechanic. He didn't just avoid the flames, he used them to his advantage, weaving through the fiery storm as if he were one with the chaos. As the flames died down, the human emerged from the smoke, unscathed, with the wrench in hand. He looked at the alien warrior, his eyes filled with nothing but focus. The alien roared again and charged, ready to fight with everything he had. But the human had already planned his next move. The battle was far from over, and he wasn't finished yet. The alien students were watching in stunned silence. This human was unlike any opponent they had ever seen. The way he moved, the way he thought, it was as if he could anticipate the future. And every time they thought they had him cornered, he slipped away, outsmarting them at every turn. They had no idea how to stop him. "How?" one of the students whispered, his voice filled with awe. "How does he do it?" The others were speechless. They couldn't comprehend it. There was no strategy, no plan that could explain this. The human was simply better. And with each passing moment, they realized the terrifying truth. The humans had only just begun to reveal their true power. As the battle continued, the arena grew even more tense. The alien warrior, his body glowing with the power of fire, stood in front of the human mechanic, who was calmly wiping sweat from his brow with a rag. The alien roared in fury, his flames crackling and twisting into fiery tendrils, his every movement fueled by rage and the overwhelming desire to destroy the human who had so easily bested his comrades. But the human wasn't fazed. He didn't flinch or show fear. In fact, he looked almost bored. The alien's fury only seemed to fuel the calmness of the mechanic. His eyes narrowed, his hands adjusting the wrench in his grip as he sized up the opponent. There was no panic, no rush, only the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly how this would end. The alien lunged forward, sending a massive wave of flame in the human's direction. The force of the fire was blinding, and for a moment, it seemed like the human would be consumed by it. But just as the flames reached him, the human slid into a crouch, his body moving with a precision that defied belief. The flames passed over him, but the human was already gone. With a flick of his wrist, the mechanic tossed a tool into the air, just a small, unassuming object, but it hit the perfect spot in the arena's structure, triggering the hidden system. A large trapdoor opened beneath the alien's feet, and with a surprised roar, the warrior fell into the pit below. The crowd gasped. The alien warrior, one of the most feared fighters in the galaxy, had been bested by a simple mechanic. The alien council watching from the stands couldn't believe their eyes. Did he just trick him? One of the council members asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Another alien, who had been silent until now, nodded slowly. He didn't just defeat him with strength. He outsmarted him. He knew exactly where to strike, where to place the trap. He didn't fight the alien head-on. He used the environment, his surroundings, to his advantage. How is this possible? The first council member asked, his voice trembling. Humans, they are not supposed to be this skilled. How did they know our weaknesses so well? The other council member shook his head. This isn't just a battle of strength. It's a battle of wit. And if we're not careful, we'll lose everything. Back in the arena, the human mechanic stood silently, his eyes locked on the pit where the alien warrior had fallen. He didn't celebrate, didn't even acknowledge the crowd's shock and awe. He simply turned, walked back to the center of the ring, and awaited the next challenger. The humans had not only survived, they had dominated, and they hadn't done it by being stronger or faster than their alien foes. They had done it with their minds. They had done it by understanding their enemies and exploiting their weaknesses. They had done it by thinking 3 steps ahead, making moves that no one could predict. And the aliens, they were starting to realize that they had underestimated these so-called primitive humans. In the cold, hard reality of the arena, it was no longer just about strength. It was about intelligence, strategy, and adaptability. And the humans were far better at these than anyone could have ever imagined. Outside the arena, the alien students were in a state of shock. They had all trained their entire lives for this moment, to prove themselves as the strongest, the fastest, the most fearsome warriors in the galaxy. But now, they were beginning to understand just how wrong they had been. "This is impossible," one of the students whispered, her voice trembling. "We've always been the strongest. We've always won. But this human, he doesn't just fight. He thinks. He anticipates. He's always one step ahead." A burly alien warrior, usually the most confident of the group, clenched his fists in frustration. "We were taught that strength is everything. But he doesn't care about strength. He makes us look like amateurs." Another student, younger and more inexperienced, looked around at the group, her face filled with fear. What if we're not the ones who are going to win? What if it's all over? What if we lose? The older student, his face grim, finally spoke up. "If we don't figure out how he's doing this, we will lose. We may be strong, but they've got something we don't, something we can't understand." Meanwhile, the alien council's conversation had taken a dark turn. The once confident members of the council now found themselves consumed by doubt. The human mechanic wasn't just a symbol of resistance. He was a symbol of humanity's ingenuity, its resourcefulness, its ability to adapt and survive against overwhelming odds. And if this mechanic was just one of their kind, what would happen if the entire human race turned its attention to the galaxy? "We have underestimated them for far too long," one of the council members said quietly, the weight of the realization settling heavily on him. "The humans are more dangerous than we thought. And it's not their strength that makes them dangerous. It's their minds. If we don't find a way to stop them, we might find ourselves the ones on the losing side. As the council members exchanged worried glances, the arena fell silent. The battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Back in the arena, the next alien warrior stepped forward. He was larger than any the human mechanic had faced before, with massive claws that could crush bone in an instant. But the mechanic didn't look concerned. He didn't even flinch. The alien looked at the human, his eyes glowing with anger. "You think you can defeat me like you did the others?" he roared. The mechanic simply tightened his grip on his wrench, his face set in an expression of calm determination. "I'm not here to defeat you," he said quietly. "I'm here to survive. And I always survive." With that, the next round began. The alien before him was unlike any the mechanic had faced so far. Larger, more menacing, and equipped with towering, jagged claws that could crush anything in its path. This one was a true titan. Every move it made sent ripples through the air, and the very ground beneath its feet seemed to tremble with the weight of its fury. The mechanic stood his ground, his wrench in hand, his expression still calm. The audience around him held its breath. It was as if the universe itself paused to witness what would come next. The alien warrior let out a deafening roar, and with one powerful swipe of its claws, it sent a gust of air so strong it almost knocked the mechanic off balance. The impact caused the entire arena to shake. The warrior was fast, too fast for any regular fighter. But the mechanic wasn't just any fighter. He quickly rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and used the momentum to spring back to his feet. His movements were fluid and calculated, as though he had anticipated the alien's every action before it even happened. The alien's claws struck again, this time aiming for the human's chest. But once again, the mechanic was gone before it could land the blow. He had already found a new angle to attack, using his surroundings to his advantage. His wrench flashed through the air, aiming at the alien's exposed side. But then, something unexpected happened. The alien anticipated the move. It shifted its body at the last second, narrowly avoiding the wrench. Its eyes locked onto the mechanic, and for the first time, the mechanic saw something in the alien's gaze. Fear. Fear that this human might not be as easy to defeat as they had all believed. The mechanic, sensing this, didn't hesitate. He pushed forward with renewed intensity, knowing that the moment of weakness was fleeting. He attacked again, striking at the alien's arm. The wrench connected with a precise, well-aimed hit, and sparks flew as the tool struck metal. The alien howled in pain. It staggered back, clutching its injured arm. But instead of retreating, it roared louder, more frantically. The fury in its eyes intensified. The audience watched in stunned silence. No one had ever seen a warrior like this react so strongly to a single blow. Most aliens would have fought back with sheer rage, but this one seemed confused. The mechanic didn't give it time to recover. He quickly moved in, using his wrench to disarm the alien, knocking one of its claws aside. The alien stumbled, trying to regain its balance, but the mechanic was already there, swinging with incredible speed. In a swift motion, the wrench hit the alien's head, and with a sickening crack, the alien collapsed to the ground. It didn't move again. The mechanic stood over it, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his face. He didn't smile. He didn't show any sign of satisfaction. He simply wiped his brow with the back of his hand and looked around, assessing the situation. For the first time since the battle began, the alien council looked uneasy. They had seen warriors fall before, but never like this. Never had they seen such precision, such determination from a human. This was not just a mechanic. This was a tactician, a strategist. The moment of silence in the arena was deafening. The alien warriors had been beaten, their pride shattered, and they now realized that their greatest strength, raw power, was no match for the calculated, relentless persistence of humanity. Back in the stands, the alien students couldn't look away. The human mechanic's every move was a lesson in the art of survival. A warrior, perhaps could dominate in a direct confrontation, but the human didn't fight that way. He didn't play by the same rules. He wasn't looking for glory. He was looking to survive, and in that single-minded pursuit, he had proven time and time again that he could overcome anything. How? How did he do that? One student asked, almost in disbelief. Another student, still staring at the arena floor, muttered, "He thinks. He doesn't just attack. He calculates. He's always 2 steps ahead." A third alien, younger and less experienced, turned to the others, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Are we really supposed to fight these humans? How can we beat them when they fight like this?" None of the older warriors had an answer. They had been beaten by a human mechanic, a species they had once thought weak, primitive, unworthy of consideration. But now, in the cold light of defeat, they realized just how wrong they had been. The human mechanic had outsmarted them, outmaneuvered them, and broken their pride with nothing more than a wrench. In the center of the arena, the mechanic finally spoke, his voice low but resolute. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just here to make sure I get to go home, alive." His words echoed in the silent arena. There was no boasting, no show of power, just the simple truth: survival. For the first time, the alien warriors understood something profound. Humanity was not a species that relied on brute force alone. They were thinkers, strategists, and they would stop at nothing to win, even if it meant bending the rules of the game. And the galaxy would never be the same. The fight was over, but the war was just beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before, but after witnessing the mechanic's skill and cunning, they knew that Earth and its people could no longer be dismissed. The Empire may have sent their greatest warriors, but Earth had sent one furious mechanic, and that was all they needed. The silence in the arena was deafening as the defeated alien warrior lay motionless on the ground. The audience was still, frozen in disbelief. No one had ever seen such a display of skill and raw determination from a human before. The Empire's best warriors, with all their strength and power, had fallen before the hands of one angry mechanic wielding nothing but a simple wrench. The alien council was in chaos. What had just happened? How had a mechanic, someone they had deemed insignificant, overcome their mightiest warrior? The atmosphere was tense, and the looks of doubt were exchanged between the high-ranking officials of the alien races. They had all been expecting a victory, a display of dominance, but instead, they were now faced with the undeniable reality. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The council leader, a towering alien known for his icy demeanor, stood up from his seat. His voice, when it came, was laced with uncertainty. This was not supposed to happen. One of the more nervous council members stammered, We must reconsider our strategy. If one human can do this, what are we facing with all of them?" His words were heavy with concern, and for the first time, fear entered the hearts of the once indomitable alien leaders. But the mechanic wasn't looking for victory. He wasn't after power or recognition. His only goal was survival. And now, with his victory in the arena, he had shown the galaxy just how far humans would go to protect themselves. He turned his back on the fallen warrior and began walking towards the edge of the arena. The crowd parted, watching him with a mix of awe, fear, and confusion. He ignored the murmurs around him, focusing solely on the task at hand, getting out of there and getting back to his people. Behind him, the defeated alien warriors began to stir. The ones who had watched the fight from the sidelines, the ones who had believed in their superiority, were now questioning everything. It wasn't just about physical strength. It wasn't about who had the largest claws, the sharpest teeth, or the toughest armor. It was about strategy, resilience, and most of all, the will to never give up. And that was something humanity had in abundance. The mechanic's victory had shattered a lie that had been told across the galaxy for centuries, that Earth and its people were weak, primitive, and unworthy. He had proven, with every move, every strike, every calculated decision, that humanity was not to be underestimated. As the mechanic made his way to the exit, one of the alien students who had been watching from the stands approached him cautiously. "How? How did you do it?" the student asked, his voice filled with awe. The mechanic paused and turned to face the young alien. His expression was serious, but there was a flicker of something deeper, understanding, perhaps. He didn't boast or give a heroic speech. Instead, he simply replied, "We survive. That's what we do. We don't give up." The student stood there for a moment, processing the words. Then, in a voice almost too quiet to hear, he muttered, I think I understand now." The mechanic didn't say another word. He turned and walked out of the arena, leaving the galaxy to rethink everything they thought they knew about humanity. The universe had always believed that strength came from power, from raw, unstoppable force. But the mechanic had shown them a different truth. Real strength came from resilience, from intelligence, and from the unbreakable spirit that humans carried with them. The Alien Council, once confident in their superiority, now sat in stunned silence. Their greatest warriors had fallen to a mechanic with nothing but a wrench. The galaxy would never be the same again. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People everywhere heard of the mechanic's incredible victory. They weren't just proud, they were empowered. The once muted voices of Earth's people now rang out louder than ever, demanding recognition, demanding respect. And across the stars, the galaxy's most powerful species were left wondering, what would humanity do next? The mechanic had shown them that Earth's people didn't need to fight the way the galaxy expected. They didn't need to match strength with strength, or power with power. Humanity had something more, something far more dangerous: ingenuity. The Empire may have sent their greatest warriors, but the universe had just learned a valuable lesson. Humans didn't need to fight fair. They didn't need to fight the way anyone expected. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with Earth's most dangerous weapon, its people. As the mechanic disappeared into the distance, the galaxy trembled at the thought of what humanity might do next. The first victory had been won, but it was only the beginning. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now humanity was ready to show them just how wrong they had been. The mechanic had proven one thing to the galaxy: never count humanity out, and the Empire would soon learn the hard way.